Today, we're diving into some important conversations about senior living, most common questions, what you should be expecting, what to look for, and ultimately a guide on how to best make those decisions for your loved ones. So without further ado, let's dive into the podcast. Welcome to the Princeton Podcast, your go-to source for everything happening in and around Princeton. Join your hosts, Zach, Mary, and Kim, three locals who live and work right here in Princeton, as we bring you the latest events, exclusive interviews with local businesses, and stories that make our town special. Your community, your stories, your podcast.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Mike's Discount Foods, and today we welcome Jamie Pendy from Sterling Point Senior Living and Paul Metzler from Elam Wellspring. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us today. We have quite a few questions, and honestly, I think these are really good questions, and I think a lot of people need to know about them. Referring to what we do with our grandparents or our parents. Loved ones that we,
Yes. So, Jamie, do you want to start us off by kind of telling us a little bit about Sterling Point?
Yes, Sterling Point is an independent assisted living and memory care community, and we have nursing, AM, PM, and overnights. We do a lot of great activities that are open to families, the community, friends, and all are welcome.
And you guys are located over near Fairview, Northland. Yep. Okay. For those that don't know. Yep. And Paul, what about Elam Wellspring?
Yeah, Elam Wellspring is a campus located actually not too far from the chamber office here. We have skilled nursing, 86 beds of skilled nursing there. We have 30-unit assisted living, and then a block away we lease some space, and we have an adult day that it's licensed for up to 24 members a day or at a time that we could have there. That one's currently going through some rebranding. It might be known to the public as Elam Oasis, but it is going to now be called Open Circle of Princeton. So that will be our adult day name going forward. So adult day, we offer respite care there. In a dignified way, I like to think of it kind of like as a daycare, but utilizing it for an older adult that may need some help in respite care during the day so that their caregiver at home can go to work and do those sorts of things. It's about a 8 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon time span. There's activities, meals, those sorts of things that go on there, and then you can pick your loved one up and have your evening and overnight with them and then repeat as you wish or need.
So do people utilize that in different ways, like maybe a caregiver that's home with their loved one all the time might just need a couple hours?
Absolutely.
Just to get some stuff done? And okay.
Absolutely. Generally, they break it down into days, so you could attend 1 or 2 days a week, or you could attend all 5 days. There's different benefits through Veteran Affairs and things like that to help compensate for that, and also a Medicaid-type product as well for county assistance that helps pay for that daily rate as well. And it's based on a daily rate, not necessarily an hourly rate. Okay. So.
That's awesome. I have had heard of Elam Oasis, but I didn't really understand what it was, and that's really a really cool service that you guys offer.
Yeah. Part of the thing that happened with that is during COVID, it was one of the only service industries for seniors that got shut down completely. So we actually got a letter from the state that mandated closing the doors of adult days until later notice. And unfortunately, in a 30 to 40 mile radius of Princeton, many did not reopen. There was one in Elk River that didn't reopen, one in Cambridge that didn't reopen. So the closest to us is really St. Cloud or us. Oh, wow. So we are actively trying to remind people that we do exist, we are open, we are still here. So you'll see in the future some rebranding and kind of open house, grand reopening type of thing coming up. So
Cool.
You know, sometimes I think too with when you have a loved one that needs extra care, all of these things that we're going to talk about today, families get sort of overwhelmed and they just don't know what to do, or they just, I think, don't reach out, and they don't look to see what might be out there to help them. They just are like, okay, here's my situation. I'm now a caregiver, and that's it. That's life. That's my life, and there's, if this podcast can help raise awareness, I mean, that would be great, because I do think families get overwhelmed and just don't know what to do or what's out there.
Or what to ask, right? I think that's what we're trying to define here as well as we can. But Assisted living, independent living world, memory care, there's a lot of complexity there, truly. There's a lot of questions that are tough to just infer without being asked. And people come to us at a bunch of different levels of what their past experiences have been. You know, some have had transitional care stays, you know, after a hospital. Some haven't. I've had residents that are 80, 90 years old that have never been to a TCU before. So then they're looking to ask these questions of, I don't even know what to expect when I go into a TCU before I go home after a hospital stay.
Right.
Transitional care unit. So like short-term rehab, say the most common thing would be like you have a fracture or something like that. You spend a short amount of time in a hospital, but then you need to go have some therapy to inpatient therapy to get you back to a baseline or better. Whether that's your non-weight bearing and then you get weight bearing as tolerated and you start working with therapy to get back to being able to go home at your prior level of care. The goal is to be independent, of course, but at the highest level you can.
Is that otherwise known as the turnaround, or is that different?
Yep. So our unit, our TCU unit, one of them we call Turnaround Point.
Okay.
And then we also have a Sunshine Circle unit that is another rehab unit that we opened up a couple years ago.
And this is mainly for people that live on their own, that don't have anybody and they can't. So they're non-weight bearing, so they can't get up and get food, and so then they're staying there for that reason.
Correct, needing help with that, but they come to us from all levels of care. For example, we partner well with Sterling Point on individuals that live in Jamie's setting that have a hospital stay, but are not quite ready to go back to the level of care that they were receiving there. They'll come stay with us for a little bit as a short stay. We'll coordinate very well with her team and then get them back to their apartment as soon as we can at the best level of care that they can to remain there. Because the goal is always, or seems to always be, to age in place. Right. People want to age. Most of us don't want to leave our homes, right? We don't want to leave the setting that we were at. I gather we'll talk about that a little bit more today too. But they want to remain where they want to be, not always where they need to be. So there's a classic line, aging in place, right? But sometimes that gets misconstrued of, I'm going to age in this apartment, in this space, and never move to another level of care. But a lot of times when we think about aging in place, we should think about aging in place on a campus, aging through that campus as our needs change.
Could you explain a little bit, or what are the differences between your guys' care and Jamie's? So like just separating the difference so people have a clear understanding quick.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the assisted living, independent living, and memory care, and feel free to chime in at any point as it relates to that. Independent living is more so you're kind of making that conscious choice to move in, more so for a social aspect in the beginning. A lot of times where I see that is it's either a couple that makes a conscious choice to move to that next level of care, to take care of themselves so they aren't quote unquote burdening their children later on, or other things to help prepare themselves from what might come next, from a necessity base. So being proactive on that standpoint, getting in for the socialization, a nice apartment, downsizing their things, and just kind of preparing for that next level. Assisted living is when you start to introduce some of those services, activities of daily living that you might need, whether it's showers, TED
bathing,
stockings,
baths.
check-ins, just to make sure that you're doing okay. It's safe to be behind a closed door, but things can happen, so just check it in to make sure you're okay and that everything is going all right. And then memory care is when you have some more of maybe dementia, maybe moderate, maybe severe, depending on that. Sundowning we see a lot of, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, where those moments of confusion seem to be more present. So memory care can help with that. It can help mitigate the wander risk. They don't know that it's 40 below outside and that they shouldn't go outside without a jacket on, and really they're just trying to get to the store, or they're looking for their daughter or someone that it really isn't there, but they're looking for them. So that secure environment is there to help keep them safe in times of that. So
Your guys' assistance is higher. Like, there's more attention. Yep.
Right? So Kaylee House, our assisted living that I kind of mentioned, we have that 30 unit, is very similar to what Jamie offers at Sterling Point, just in a little bit smaller setting. And I do not have independent living, although people can live there independently with no services and then add services under the assisted living piece as they go. But I do not have a secure memory care in my assisted living as she does.
We have 21 studio apartments, so memory care is studio apartments. They're smaller. And then for independent and assisted living, they're 1 to 2 bedrooms, but that memory care unit is secure, so they're unable to get out unless families come or activity happen. So that's how that works. And we have a lot of different activities, so they're not just stuck over there. I feel like families think that they're just going to be over there all the time, but they really are coming out.
Yeah.
We do have physical therapy and occupational therapy, but not as like high as level as they do.
So I guess I didn't realize before that you guys, Sterling Point and Elam, work quite closely together.
Yeah.
With your your residents, depending on the level of care that they need.
Absolutely. And being a small community, I think that's important, right? We both have different services that we can offer. There is a need that is enough in the area to support both of us as it relates to that. And when I look at working for a not-for-profit senior living, my responsibility is to take care of seniors, not only who are under my roof, but who are in the area, who are in the community, who are in the state. So partnering on that together, I don't consider us competition as it relates to taking care of the residents in our area.
So how would you, if a family is, I have one question first, leading into this. You mentioned about maybe a couple that might think it's time for us to, we don't want to be a burden, quote unquote, to our kids. Or maybe we can't take care of the lawn and we can't, do this kind of thing and we're going to move into this next level. How often do you actually see that happen where they choose to move in? I'm just curious about that.
Not very often.
Usually, yeah.
I feel like it's best though to give that option like right away, like telling your family members, why don't we go check out a couple places so you can find the home that you really want to live in before it gets to like an accident of falling and ending up in a TCU and then going somewhere you did not want to go.
Right.
So like having those options prepared, and there's always home care. Like you can always stay in your home and have somebody come and take care of you before making those next big steps. And I think that's really important to know, is to have somebody, if you're not wanting to go or willing to go, you can have somebody come in your house for 2 hours or 4 hours or 6 hours. So I think that's a great choice as well.
So how do you start those conversations with loved ones? What's your recommendation of, you're maybe, you're seeing your parents, we're not talking about you, mom and dad, but just asking.
I mean, I am gathering information.
But, you, sometimes the kids, will see that. And, I know my grandma, who was at Sterling Point for several years before she passed, she, had always said, don't ever, you hear that, don't ever put me in a home, so they say, don't ever put me in a home. And then there's this guilt from the family, like they said they never wanted to, whatever it might be. It's different than I think people think, just like you talked about with memory care. Right. It's not like it's, this sterile, white walls, lock and key type of situation. And so, I guess the conversation starter can be difficult for loved ones.
I would say, like, when you see medications are being missed, or like when you're around your loved one and you're seeing like they're not showering, they're not taking those medications, like I said, and they're not having that quality of life that they could have, and you're not able to be present, it's just opening those doors of, let's go check out a couple of places. I know that this isn't what you're wanting to do, but why don't we go check out, Elam, Sterling Point, all over, and see what you think of it. We're not making you, but let's just go check out a couple of options. And like I said, home care is a great option too. But just really watching what's going on at the house when you are there and seeing if things are missing that they're not able to do anymore, and bringing that up to them, but not aggressively.
With the home care, how far do you guys service?
Well, LifeSpark is in St. Louis Park, and so they do go all around, but there's quite a few different home care agencies that people can go through, so I'm assuming that you can find somebody anywhere that you really are.
So I never, I never really thought about it this way. So it's like, people go in and start planning, like they're planning their end of life, or they're working on their wills, or, at any age. And I just had never thought about this would be something to maybe put in there and do it way before. And, you know, like this is what I like, or this is what I didn't like, or just when it gets to be that point, like you said, if an accident happens, or if it's all of a sudden like you have to go next week, you know, the family has something to kind of fall back on and be like, well, this is what you chose.
Yeah.
But I kind of like that.
Yeah, just giving them options.
Yeah.
Not making them like just, you know, we can try home care, have somebody come into your house, and then as it gets harder, you know, you really liked here or here, why don't we go check it out? It's a 30-day lease. If you don't like it, just give them a 30-day notice. But most of the time when you have moved somewhere, you're going to stay there, but at least you have that idea in your head, I can do it for 30 days, and if I don't like it, I can give them my notice. I'm not locked in for a year,
Right.
you know?
So do you offer tours for people that are just, you know, thinking of planning ahead and?
Absolutely.
One thing I wanted to say about the tour, and I'm going to ask you more specifics about it, but when we went on the tour at Sterling Point, it was really emphasized that this is your apartment. You know, this is you're in an apartment building, here's your apartment. But if you need extra services, we have those too. But you don't have to take them if you don't want to. This is your apartment. You know, we don't just burst into your room and, you know, that was a different way, I think, of thinking of it than I expected, which I thought was great. So, you know, like what kind of things on a tour should people be looking for and thinking about?
I would say like the interaction with staff and residents, like seeing how the staff treats your loved one. Like, are they helpful? Are they ignoring them? Like, just really watching for that. Are they on their cell phones? Are they really paying attention to the residents? And are they loving their job? Like, do they love being there? Or like you're at a place and they're just like, whatever, I'm not gonna pay attention. You know, you see everything. And then I would say looking at like the food, if you go during like breakfast, lunch, or dinner, like check out the food, see what it looks like. Ask if you can have a meal. They're not gonna say no. So you should be able to try that food. I would say looking at the activities that they have provided there and how everybody interacts, and just seeing that, I would say.
I would agree. I think taking a look at the atmosphere, it's cliche, but I think a lot of us have a family-like atmosphere. You should feel welcome. It's joyful when you're there. And looking more than just a physical plant. I've been a licensed administrator since 2014, and in different styles of buildings, different age buildings, from brand new to 1960s care center and those sorts of things. But one thing that I can say is the quality of care is not justified by how new or shiny the building looks surface level. I've seen in metro areas many brand new buildings that have subpar care on paper and in the news. But just to remember that a building isn't what sells the care. It's the outcomes. It's when you walk in there, is it neat and clean regardless of the age of the building? What are the odors like? Across the board, you know, those are the things that I would look at, and in conjunction with like what Jamie said as well, the meals, activities, what's the interaction? Is there laughter? Is there, you know, sometimes when you walk in a building, if it's the right time of day, hearing noise is a good thing versus walking around and everything's silent, because people are at a point in their lives where social interaction and lack of isolation is a good thing. So.
Part, we had visited my great grandma, and she was in some caring units, but as soon as we walked in, it was like a party was going on, and they had this area of all these ladies. They were like knitting or doing some activities, and they're like, oh my gosh, hey, the grandson, oh my, you know, like they all was like in there. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. The atmosphere was like, you could tell right away when you walked in, like, oh, this is like really joyful and it's lighthearted, like. You can get that right away. And I've also been in others where it's like, oh, this is kind of, you can just feel the vibe. It's not necessarily where I think I would want to spend a lot of time. So like I think you catch on to that right away. And then, like you said, going into those other details too is important. Smells, food, care, cell phones, who's smiling, who's not, yeah. So.
Kind of to that point, my favorite part is when you walk through and it's not staged, right? We've all heard of or worked with organizations or things where you're doing that quick infomercial and everything is perfect and it's staged or whatever. I encourage the random drop in of like, this is what you get on a day-to-day. a building and a culture, if done right, should be everyone is saying hi and welcoming to everyone in the hallway, not just because you're being told to do so or because everyone needs to be on script because we have XYZ going through our building. I think it's just being authentic and not being afraid to be who you are.
So this is kind of, I guess, for both of you, and if you want to answer it one at a time, but what are some of the most common questions that you guys get, and how do you answer them? You know, or like maybe questions or objections, like
Pricing. Just like knowing how much do we have to pay. So like going over that. Usually after the tour, I'll sit down, not talk about it during the tour. We'll sit down, go over what the pricing is, because there's the apartment, there's the level of care, and then there's the meal plan that you have to pay for. And Sterling Point, it is 2 years private pay, and then you can join Elderly Waiver, which Elderly Waiver is a county government assisted program that helps pay. So just going over like pricing with families so they have an idea of where they're at. And there's always room to work with people. It's not always 2 years private pay. You can work with them. But that's also getting on different lists as well, like making sure you're on 2-3 different lists so then you know if it's urgent, you're able to get in somewhere. And so I think that's the top like questions that people want to talk about is the pricing, even though it's not fun. It is
Yeah.
something that you have to talk about. And then I would say the staff to resident ratio, so you know like how many people are on AM, evening, overnights, knowing what nursing's going to be there, and if it's on-site or triage when it's the certain time of day.
How difficult is it to get into the Sterling Point or any senior living right now? Is it?
Is there waiting lists?
I know there at one time seemed like you could not get into any place. I just was curious.
I feel like it really depends on, honestly, the day.
Yeah.
You know, it really depends on the day because some days there are openings, sometimes there's wait lists. Depends on the time of the year, too. A lot of people don't like moving in the winter, or like holiday season, so it really depends on the day if there's openings, and that's why I always say get on a wait list or at least have your name there so you can call and be like, is there an opening? And then you can either say, yes, we're ready, or we're going to pass this time.
Okay. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I would say in contrast to that, so skilled nursing right now still has a pretty long wait list. I would say it's 6 months plus to get a skilled nursing long-term care bed. Not short stay. The short stay, we have availability that truly ebbs and flows on a daily basis. We may have 5 admissions in a day or 5 discharges in a day or both, depending on what the week looks like, what the hospital system has going on as far as our referral sources go. So I would say it depends on the day. But for long-term care, it's definitely still tough to find a bed. Some of that is location. Some buildings or providers are struggling with staffing still. We're fortunate at Elam to be sitting pretty well staffing-wise, but then we don't have the bed availability because they're full. So it seems to be either one of those two. Either you have bed availability but not the staff to take care of the residents, or you don't have the staff but you have the bed availability. It's kind of that double-edged sword. I would say to people, even on the skilled setting, which the payment system on a skilled setting, whether long-term care or short-term care, is different than assisted living. And those, I think, clarifiers that families should ask for is to really look into understanding that payment system. Those rates are not set by us as an organization. Those rates are driven by county property rates. They're driven and set by the county and the state. They are not set by us. So a lot of times, I'll have someone that feels like they have that understanding coming in, and then they'll get the bill and they're like, whoa, it's like $400 a day. And they're like, how is this driven and how is this made up and what's the breakdown and can I get an itemized bill? And the answer, unfortunately, is there isn't itemized bills in skilled nursing because what drives that payment is so complex based on the nursing assessments, based on what their diagnosis is and why they're there for care. And all of that has a calculation and equation related to how it fits into those. There's like 40 or 50 plus different levels of payment that could be in a nursing home or care center, like what I'm talking about. So I think that's the pieces to start early and earlier than you need to, looking at facilities and how they're built and starting to understand that piece before you get there, because I have seen many times that it's a need-based and it's urgent. And then it unfortunately fuels frustration, and family members are advocates for their loved ones or the residents themselves if they're cognitively able to understand what's going on, because they just don't understand. They've been a caregiver for them in their home, and then especially if they're kind of more of a type A personality of caregiver, now they're giving up some of this control that they have over the support of their loved one. They then end up grieving the loss of that control, so they're stuck between being a caregiver and then having it be their mom or dad.
Right.
And they're not able to bridge that gap because it's just a whirlwind all at that time. They're in the hospital for 3 days, they're getting that very intimate one-to-one care, it's high intensity. A physician says, hey, it's time to go to hospital's like, it's time for you to go out of here. Physician's like, hey, I'm recommending that you go to a short-term rehab for XYZ, and then they go there, and all of a sudden you have a resident and a family member who have never been here before. They don't understand the complexities. They're getting very high bills because of how much it costs to be there, and it can invoke some frustration. So it's trying to be as proactive as possible through each of those phases, right? I would say through the housing phases, whether that's independent living, assisted living, or memory care, whether that's adult day, whether that's nursing home, and the different offerings there, whether long-term care or short-term care or memory care skilled. I have that at Elam as well. So there are a lot of potential questions. And as I kind of mentioned before, it's difficult to infer what those questions would be if they don't know what to ask.
Right.
So it's kind of just trying to get that 101, if there's offerings through community ed about Medicaid and Medicare and those sorts of things, to reach out and look at those resources before you need it. I think it's just, that's some of the biggest things I see is confusion in payment, thinking that buildings set the rate at whatever they want. And Minnesota is also, for knowledge of everyone, is a rate equalization state. So that means that I cannot charge a higher daily rate than what Medicaid would pay.
Okay.
So like in a skilled nursing environment, if Medicaid would pay $350 a day, I can't charge a private pay person $450 a day to make up the offset because it's a rate equalization. It has to be the same exact rate. Now, apartments are a little bit different. We base those sorts of things off market studies and just kind of what the cost to provide that care is. And many times, even though that seems to be higher as well, there's obviously inflation, everything else is more expensive too. There's labor, wages, those sorts of things. But you're not usually making a large profit. You're usually breaking even on what the cost of care is. So.
Yeah, that's a lot. It is. I mean, I guess the message is that we hear from a lot of our, we had Williams Dingman on as well, and that was the message there to plan.
Yeah.
Plan ahead. I mean, write it down and let your loved ones know. Go on a visit and see what it's like and plan ahead.
I think the reality of it is it's human nature to think that we're not going to get there, right? But I mean, just like when you had Williams Dingman on, or when I think about a hospice product or some of those other things, I time and time again watch people not plan ahead. And it becomes that urgent, under fire decision making with the fueled frustration because of just that environment that you're living in at that moment. And my example of hospice services is that hospice services with a qualifying diagnosis are available to everyone. And I see so many people that just, instead of being informed and being proactive on their approach to it, and I get it, it's a tough conversation to talk about, like, people's first flag that they put up with hospice is basically, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
Like, that is what is gonna happen.
Yeah.
But I've seen so much of hospice offerings help people thrive to where they actually graduate from hospice and they live a couple more years than they even anticipated because of those extra support services. Like, a hospice company can come in and provide support in Jamie's setting. They can come in and provide support in any of my settings. And they give extra bath aids and support. You get massage therapy, you have music therapists, you get one-to-one visits, you have chaplains that can come by. So when you look at that, that doesn't seem like something I would want to wait until like the week that I'm gonna pass away to partake in.
Right.
And there are specific assessments and things that go through that too. So if there's ever a fear of like, oh, if I sign on to hospice, it means I'm locked in and this is the only option for the rest of my life. It's just not true. There's many options.
My life is over soon. I mean, when you hear people say, so-and-so went on hospice,
Yeah.
you just, it's over. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely how, the perception. But like our grandma was on hospice for
2 years.
at least 2 years.
It was 2 years to the
Yeah.
day.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay, 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
It really does help them thrive.
Absolutely.
Again, the massage
Yep.
and just the one-on-one time. Because a lot of the time you don't want to leave your room
Right.
when you hit a certain point and you
Right.
just want somebody with you. So I love hospice.
I
Like,
think hospice is great too.
Yeah.
They're amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're amazing.
We can take a break.
Okay. Yeah, so we're just going to take a quick break and we'll be back in just a minute.
You've probably noticed food prices continue to rise. Food shortages, rising inflation, and packaging issues are all making your grocery dollars lose their buying power. With Mike's business model, they can buy products for less and help you save. They are a true discount surplus store. Shop at Mike's Discount Foods. They always sell you more for less.
And we're back. So I wanted to get into a little bit about the person who's moving into senior living and maybe that person that is feeling forced a little bit perhaps by their family. How do you help that person adjust when they arrive?
I would say offering the meals, getting to know them really, like what kind of activities do you like to do? And you can do that before the tour and like, maybe it hits a day that there's knitting going on or, there's, we have a welcoming committee at Sterling Point. So when somebody's new that's coming in, we have residents that will go and introduce themselves and then get to know them so they know they like to do puzzles or they like to do certain things. So like finding that niche that they really like and making sure they know like you're going to be able to do this not alone. You have friends that you can do with it, and then I would also say when showing the room, like, do you picture yourself here? Like, make it feel really real. Like, do you have certain picture frames that you absolutely love or furniture that you can see right here? Like, just making it very real for them so they can see and envision what that apartment will look like. And a lot of the time, you may even know somebody. Like, I feel like most of the time when I give a tour, they run into people that they know. So it's just as like, oh my gosh, I have friends.
Yes.
Like it's a really good, exciting feeling. But just getting to know that person very well and like knowing, we have that here. You can do it here too, type of thing.
Yeah, I think engaging we engage our whole team in that. To your point about knowing people, we have the blessing. I know it can be a curse sometimes, but the blessing of a small town. I have staff that know a lot of our residents just from years of different career paths that they've crossed or where they've worked, and they know so-and-so. But then taking that and embracing it to help them feel comfortable, to Jamie's point, taking and individualizing the care that you provide for them and not just saying, hey, it's another body in a room type of deal. I do think also encouraging the meal times. When you're at home, if that's your prior environment, in like a home in the community prior to moving in, you are just eating alone potentially or with one other person. But I've seen so many relationships flourish just from the dinner table, whether that's breakfast, whether it's a coffee socialization before a bingo or another activity in the afternoon. And you start to see the relationships that are built to an extent that like they worry about each other and they go, it's just like out in the community. They're like, hey, where's Florence?
Yeah.
She's always here. She's always here at this time. Like, why is she not here? And of course, there's all of the things, HIPAA, you don't want to ever break with, cross stuff like that, but they're socializing with each other. So whatever they talk about or choose to disclose or not, that's on them, right?
Yeah.
That's not a facility doing that.
Right.
So it's just super cool to see those relationships that are built when they move in. And that's in all settings. I see it in our adult day. I see it in the skilled nursing side, whether long-term or short-term. I see it in our housing with the assisted living as well, and it's really cool.
That is neat.
And it's cool to get intertwined in those as a staff member too, because then you get to hear the banter, you get to joke with them, and it just really, they get to show you that they still have a purpose too, because they do.
Yeah. We would go and sit and have lunch with our grandma. It was always, the same people at the table.
Yeah.
She had her certain spot, and they would always, like, pull up a chair, do you want something to eat? Do you want some coffee? And it just, I miss seeing all those ladies too since my grandma passed, because it's a hoot.
Yeah, and I think back to, both of our grandma Arvie was at Kaylee, and then Grandma Fran
Elam.
was at Elam, and Grandma Fran was at Sterling. Both places were so wonderful. But I remember having the conversations maybe within just us cousins or with our parents, or talking. Neither one of them, really, they wanted to live on their own, and of course they could still drive, which no, neither one of them could have been driving. But anyway, we took the approach like, you're always complaining about being lonely, and you don't get enough visitors, and all of the the grandkids and stuff are just so busy. We still visit, but it's just not enough. So we would talk to them about, like, you'll have friends, you'll make friends, you can play cards with people, you can go watch TV with you, just around people whenever you want to be. You can still be private in your own apartment, but then you can just go out and have people. And I think that was super helpful.
And then I think, if you guys want to talk about some of the activities, but I thought it's cool. Like, there's happy hour, and there's somebody playing music, and it's just really fun and joyful, like you'd said.
Yeah, we have live entertainment often, almost weekly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
we celebrate holidays and stuff.
Yeah.
yeah, religious services, I feel like that's a big one. Is non-denominational, Catholic, Lutheran, whatever. We have different services, and then in-house chaplain that can do one-on-one visits. If you don't want to leave your room, you can still get those services. And another way of looking at it is saying, like, you don't have to take care of that big responsibility of a whole house. You just have this apartment. And then a lot of the time we have housekeeping that goes in once a week. So your apartment is going to be cleaned, vacuumed, bathroom done, and you won't have to worry about cleaning up before everybody comes over.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's not a rush. It's just simple.
And the other cool part about that is not only do you have a smaller responsibility, but you have access to the greater
Yeah.
amenities of the building, right?
Yep.
So if you have common spaces or dining room or extra areas, say you want to have a gathering for a holiday, or just, hey, it's a 80th birthday party and I want to have my family come, we can accommodate that in ways, to your point. You don't have to clean up and make sure your apartment can accommodate all of that. You can do it right in a general space with our support, really.
Right.
You can also get your hair done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Without leaving, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of great, and I just want to point out too that when this is something I didn't know about, I don't know if you did, Mary, but when my grandma passed at Sterling, and there was like a little, I don't know what you want to call it, or you probably have a name for it, but a lot of the staff gathered around my grandma and told stories about her, and did a blessing, and it was just before she was taken out, and it was just really meaningful. And talking, I have a friend whose daughter works at Sterling Point, and she had contacted me and said, I didn't realize that, I didn't put two and two together, that was your grandma, because my daughter had come home and said, it was a tough day today, I lost a friend. And, and this is someone that of my youngest son's age, and I just thought that was really neat, that for people to remember that the staff really gets to know these residents, and it's a big loss for everybody when someone passes there too, and it's just very respectful, and it was appreciative. We were, but it was appreciated by our family.
The honor walk.
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I have it all in video. It was really cool. But, that just says that, at both of your places, that your employees really put their heart and souls into the residents. And sometimes we don't know that until we heard all of these different staff members, like, telling stories. I mean, one of the nurses was talking about, she had brought in her daughter and she was coloring with my grandma. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so cool.
Yeah.
It's so personal.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the highlights of our years are bringing that cross-generational piece where we'll partner with the school right across the street from us, and they'll come in on any given day, but they'll come in trick-or-treating or they'll come in on Christmas, and our residents just light up when they see the children.
They do.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite things to do. I'm a volleyball coach, and I'm really big on getting my girls out into the community. And we have done both the Elam Home and Sterling Point, where we just have a day where we don't practice. We go into the facilities, and what I try to tell my girls is sit down and have conversations with people. We'll just go into like the dining hall. We'll bring flowers. We'll write thank you notes. Some years I've had girls come in and sing, play the piano, whatever it is. But it's also teaching these girls to like start a conversation with somebody who's older, and the residents just love it. And I'm trying to encourage those other coaches and other teams to do this because it's just a really, really cool thing for both sides.
I know that we really, really appreciate it just because there are some residents that don't have family at all. So
Yeah,
then when you
it's
do
the same.
have kids and volunteers and animals coming in, it just lights up their life just because they don't have the support that some of the residents do have. So we do appreciate it when people come in.
Yeah, it's a good feeling on both sides for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say it's good for the kids too, because I think it can be scary for kids. They just don't, they don't know what to do. Yeah, and
They
so I
don't.
think it's,
I mean, when we walk in, they're just like, "What do we do?"
Yeah.
And then I kind of like coach them, like, "You go sit down with that man over there
Yeah.
and ask him, start asking him questions about his life."
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you look around the room and there's all these conversations happening,
Mm-hmm.
and then we leave, and the girls just have these big smiles on their face because it was a feel good for them. They learned something, and they understood that they just made somebody's day.
Yeah. I mean, you don't even have to be a kid. Like I was asking a guy, I met this guy named Mo, and he told me about his whole life and how he served, and I was like, wow, that was amazing. It's like,
Yes.
they have a
There's
lot of
amazing
good stories there.
There's
There's a lot of
amazing
history.
stories.
So much wisdom to share.
So much.
They've been there before us type of conversations that can help guide us. There's reciprocal respect built, as you kind of mentioned, Kim, just with kids that may not know how to interact with other people. There's just so many life skills that can be kind of paid forward, really, to say.
You could have like your own series, wisdom or Wednesday wisdom talks. With like,
Exactly. Yeah.
We could move the podcast
Yeah.
to Elam and Sterling.
Uh-huh.
Yes, that would be awesome. So I encourage anybody who's listening, if you have a group or that is looking for volunteer hours or just something to do or something, to show kindness, contact these facilities and see what you can do, if you can volunteer to help on activities or just stop in for a visit. It's awesome.
Is there anything else that we missed that you really wanted to talk about? How can people learn more about your facilities and what you offer and the different things that you do?
Just call, email, text, show up, and
Yeah,
we'll give
that would
you
be
the
great.
information
Yeah.
that you need.
Yeah,
Yeah.
drop in.
Yeah.
Everyone's welcome. I know even talking about that too, it's so fun to have these relationships built that go so deeply through caregivers of loved ones that I'll have a resident who is passed away or whatnot, and their son or daughter still continue to show up and be a part of our family.
Right.
And those are the feel good moments where it's like, if I made that good of an impact on the care that I provided to their loved one and what they experienced during that process, and they want to continue to show up days, months, and years after the fact when they don't necessarily have a connection other than that at that moment, that's impactful to me.
It's a real testament to the care that you give, I think, too.
I think it's awesome. Can
Yeah.
just anybody go and get on a wait list? Sounds amazing to me.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to clean the house.
You don't have to
What?
do anything.
Yeah.
If you can afford it.
Yeah, that's right.
No cooking, no cleaning, no nothing.
Yeah, no, I think this was a great podcast. A lot of great questions answered and insightful for me, and I'm assuming for a lot of other
Yeah.
families.
Yeah.
So-
Mom and Dad, get ready for tours.
Yeah, so thank you guys for.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for the invite and letting us join you.
Yeah. Well, we look forward to having you back again.
All right. Well, until next time, this is Kim, Zach, and Mary signing off. This is Princeton. Stay here, play here.